I don't know. I wasn't going to watch this, but then I went through the comments and I don't know. There's just a lot of back and forth in the comments. A lot of people love what this dude is saying. A lot of people, they think he's full of crap. So let's watch. I'm curious. This dude is very familiar. I don't know exactly where I remember him from. I don't know if he was in the military or something. I don't remember, but he's been on podcasts before. But the title is Why I Turned to Faith After Years of Atheism. Let's watch. A lot of people in the comments are going back and forth about this video. Let's figure out why.
Two women who raised me. My father was killed in a violent crime when I was still very young. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother and my mother.
That's what it was. Military and undercover. Got it. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Raised me in a household together. And my grandmother, traditional, like strong Catholic Mexican woman.
Okay.
And my mother grew up under that strong Catholicism and just didn't like it. So when my mother had me, she raised me anti-religion. Religion is the opium for the masses. Religion is flawed. Religion has failed. Religion is man. You know, you don't need religion. So from my youngest years, all the way through till I went to the Air Force Academy at 18 years old, I was vehemently anti-religion, right? If you were Christian, if you were Catholic, if you were Mormon, if you were Jewish, I didn't care. You were clearly ignorant and you are clearly stupid because you believe that there's a God, because that's the world that I was raised in. Well, then I go to the Air Force Academy and my neighbor, the other cadet who lives in the door next to me, is a guy named Meredith Jessup. Folks, if you're listening right now, if you find Meredith Jessup, Meredith with an E at the end of Meredith, he's in St. Louis right now. He was from Baltimore. Just send him a love. Send him a message. Tell him, thank God that he took the time to pour his blessings into me. Because I lived next to Meredith for a year. And I treated him like trash every day. And every day.
Thank you, Spicy Cow. I just had to say that. Why your name Spicy Cow, though? Okay, I'm sorry, but thank you.
He woke up with a smile. Every day he showed a resiliency to put up with me and my negative attitude about the academy and my negative attitude about faith. And every day he just demonstrated to me what a faithful Christian kingdom builder looks like. And you cannot ignore it. You cannot ignore an example like that. And that's what really started me on my faith, because that's what made...
Hold on, I'm going to rewind it for a second, because I think he said something very profound. What the heck is going on? What is that? What is it? Hold on. I'm just trying to rewind it. I've never even seen this browser before. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry.
Showed a resiliency to put up with me and my negative attitude about the academy and my negative attitude about faith. And every day he just demonstrated to me what a faithful Christian kingdom builder looks like. And you cannot ignore it. You cannot ignore an example like that. And that's what really started me on my faith, because that's what made me question everything about my childhood. How can this kid be so kind and so friendly and so capable, so willing and so capable to put up with all the garbage I'm putting up with at the academy, and also bear the brunt of my skepticism and my attitude. And every day he did it. And then the next year he wasn't living next to me anymore. He went somewhere else. And I never saw him again for the rest of my time at the academy. He graduated in my same class. Never saw him again because it was, 3,000 students over the course of however many miles of academy campus.
But he changed your life for literally forever, for eternity.
For eternity. Changed my life because that planted the seed, and then that question grew on its own. And then another cadet, a guy named Ian Slasnick, invited me to his wedding. And for divine intervention, I couldn't think of a good wedding gift to give him. So when I was invited to his wedding, I decided the wedding gift I wanted to give him was a journal of my journaling, my own walk through the Bible. So then I read the Bible every day for about 9 months, and I would journal my thoughts about what I had just read, from Old Testament all the way through the New Testament, all the way to the book of Revelations, cover to cover. And I would journal it for him in this separate journal. And then for his wedding, I took the journal to him and I was like, Ian, I was saved. I was saved in Isaiah when I was reading the Bible. on my own in my bed, in my room. And I took that journal to him and I was like, Ian, this is my gift to you. Thank you for the example that you gave me, for the persistence and the resilience, and never straying from being my friend, even when I was not a man of faith and I was the opposite of it. And he took it, he looked at it, he opened it, he saw what it was, and it was like a hot potato. He threw that right back in my arms and he was like, I'm touched. You don't ever let this go. This is something that needs to be with you forever. And it still sits on my bookshelf now. My wife, when she met me and she saw it, she was like, this is so incredibly special. She transcribed the whole thing into a digital file. She made like 4 copies of it. 2 of them sit in a safety deposit box because she doesn't ever want me to lose. The fire burns down the journal. She doesn't ever want me to lose the reflections. And that was my spiritual faith. That carried me. It carries me every day. I have my own ups and downs through my journey. My grandmother recently died, which is all the way back to the beginning of the story. And my mom, who is still as anti-religious as it comes, was there at the funeral along with her sisters and her brothers. And this incredible funeral service in this little church in a little village in Casa Grande, Arizona, where my grandmother died, where she spent the last 30 years of her life. And she was such a pillar of faith, but nobody really knew her. She had 12 or 15 really close friends who were all retired single ladies just like her. Half of them had passed before my grandmother had passed, and the remaining 5 or so were at the funeral. And all anybody could talk about was my grandmother's faith, her constant, resilient faith, and how she never wandered from it and she never strayed from it. And I sat there and I could see my mother's reaction to hearing that one of my grandmother's biggest, most powerful traits was her faith. And it was such a strange juxtaposition, almost like seeing, a black spot on a color of screen. And I don't know how she must have felt being there, but for me, it was this incredible experience of recognizing the impact that my grandmother had through just one thing. Just one thing. Not her career, not her family, not opening a restaurant or owning it, just being a woman of such intense faith that people were attracted to her, people were bonded to her, and that's what people remember about her. And it struck me because I realized, like, I have a chance to do all the things I'm doing now and also be a pillar of faith. And I loved it when I saw the invitation to come speak here at Resilient with you. It was a no-brainer to me because I was like, this is an awesome opportunity to talk about something nobody ever asks me about.
Yeah. What's that impact been like on your family?
It's an incredible impact because I am not raising my children with any standard religion. I am encouraging them to explore. I'm encouraging them to ask questions. I'm encouraging them to make their own decision. Because in my journey through the Bible, it was so personal because it was my own decision. And my wife is Buddhist. My wife was raised as a child in a Buddhist household by a very strict Buddhist mother who proselytized the Buddhism to everybody.
Sure.
So when I met my wife, she was strictly
I've got some things to say about that.
Buddhist. And then when we had children, she was like, I'm going to raise my kids Buddhist. And I was like, it's a personal journey, but I love you. And I believe that God has me here for a reason. So I'm not going to argue with you. Fast forward now, it's my 7-year-old daughter, my 11-year-old son, my wife of 14 years. She has read the Bible with me. She asks incredibly intelligent, insightful questions about the faith and about Christianity probably 2 times a week.
Wow.
She struggles to maintain her own Buddhist practice sometimes, but she never struggles to understand that God is forgiveness and that we live in a fallen world and that we have spiritual gifts and that we're ordained to something great. Like, she doesn't struggle with those because Buddhism is all about practice.
Yes.
Whereas Christianity is all about faith. And then my children get to see both of us and they get to see mom's question.
So Violet, you said, I mean, encourage learning, but I wouldn't want to encourage them going into other faiths. And I'm also assuming he wasn't a Christian when he got married. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, he probably wasn't a Christian when he got married, just operating under assumption from the children's standpoint. And it sounds like, just to stay on that point for a second, it sounds like his wife's heart is being worked on in this process, right? You know, hopefully she fully submits, gives her life to Jesus, and, you know, accepts the gospel. But from the children's standpoint, yeah, man, like, here's my thing. Here's my thing. If you know the truth, why are you encouraging your children to why are you encouraging your children in any other way if you know the truth? I don't have any problem with learning about other religions, but, you know, children are very fragile. They're very fragile. They're very curious. They're very vulnerable. And the most beautiful thing is when you see a child who has a relationship with Jesus. It's the most beautiful thing in the world, because children, I feel like the faith of a child is the faith that children have, in my opinion, is the most purest form of faith. Because when you see a child with a genuine relationship with Jesus, it is the most beautiful thing in the world. It is the most beautiful thing in the world. Even I look at my daughter, she's 5, and she's the first person to encourage us. Like, she has such a big heart, but she's the first person to encourage us. She's the first person to pray. She's the first person to give thanks to God, to Jesus. Anytime there's worship music that comes on, she's the first person to get on her feet and worship. It's so beautiful, the relationship that she has, and it's so genuine and it's so pure. So in my experience, why would you want to steer your child in any other direction if you yourself are claiming to know the truth? That's just me. I'm not speaking anything negative on him or anything like that. You know, I don't know how he operates his household. He also said another thing that was very interesting. In the very beginning of the video, yeah, everyone has free will, but like, dog, like, you're asking me about my child? If I know the truth, if I know Jesus Christ, if you're asking me, it's my child. If you're asking me what direction I'm going to steer my child, I'm going to steer my child in the direction of the truth. And yes, my child has free will in that process. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to open up the door to all this confusion. That's just me. He did say something in the beginning of the video. He said that the reason that he was brought to faith in the first place was because of a person, and was because of the example that that person set. And essentially, the thing that I was thinking of is like, yo, you can't contain the light. When you turn on the light, darkness has to flee. It cannot be contained. When we are truly operating according to the will of God in the Spirit, when we are truly, you know, living out our faith and walking it out and being that light in our everyday life, people are going to notice you. They're going to notice that you're different. They're going to notice that you're not shaken by the things that the world wants you to be shaken by. They're going to notice. You're going to stand out. And some people are going to be turned off to it. Some people are going to hate you. Some people are going to persecute you. Some people are going to want nothing to do with you. But guess what? There's going to be people who notice in a positive way, and they're going to be attracted to that light. So it was just a beautiful thing to hear him say that. And it's just a reminder of why it's so important that we are very mindful of our conduct, especially in the presence of unbelievers. We have to be very mindful of our conduct in the presence of unbelievers, because people are people, and people oftentimes, they make assumptions based on their experience with other people. So if you have an unbeliever that encounters a Christian in this Christian is, wilding out, talking crazy, doing this and that. And listen, humans are humans. It is what it is. Like, I get it. But if you have a Christian who is acting like this and operating like that, bro, the example that you're setting to that unbeliever is, oh, these Christians they're all phonies. They're all fake. They say one thing, they do the opposite. They preach at me, but they don't actually walk out what they actually, say that they believe in. So why would I believe in it? So we have to be very mindful of our conduct amongst unbelievers. Anyway, let's finish this video.
To me about God,
Yeah.
and they get to ask me questions about God, and they also get to see their mom chant Buddhist practice. And the kids, honestly, they engage in both on their own initiative. And to me, it's a beautiful thing because they're developing their own opinion, and God's ways are not our ways.
Yeah.
So I trust that He will do what He will
What
do.
he does, yeah. What he does. Man, that's incredibly personal.
I do listen. I like what he said there, is that he's trusting that God is going to do what he is going to do. I like what he said there. I'm not gonna critique it too much. Like, I'm not gonna critique it too much. I think it's very important in that environment. I think it's very important that everybody understands what the gospel is. I think it's very important to understand what Jesus did for you on the cross and why he did it. I think that's very important. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with learning about these different religions. But as a child, as I said before, I just feel like it could be confusing when you're like actively practicing two religions at the same time. It gets very confusing. The spiritual friction in that household, it seems like he's handling it well. I guess it works for them, but I would be very adamant that, we understand the gospel and we understand why Jesus did what he did. And we understand at the same time, there is no salvation in, not to be harsh, but it's the truth. There is no salvation in what your mom is practicing. There's not. And like I said, maybe they got married. I'm assuming they got married, at a point where maybe his faith was in a different stage. But that's tricky. That's very tricky. It's almost like the same thing as you have a believer and an unbeliever who are married. Let's say both of them went into the marriage as unbelievers. Let's say, for example, the husband becomes a believer, but the wife remains an unbeliever. They have children. It's a tricky situation. I think ultimately it's going to take time. But it's tough. That's tough. But I mean, I agree with him. There is certain points in your life where you just have to trust that God is going to work it out for his good. What do y'all think? Well, this is what I was saying. You said that dude is dropping the ball. He's supposed to train up his children in the ways of the Lord. He doesn't sound saved to me. That's why I said I would be very adamant in that household that everybody understands the gospel. That's why I said that, because I'm not going to say he doesn't sound saved, but I'm just going to say, like, yo, if you understand, if you understand the gospel, then like you would understand that all this other stuff is just diverting away from the truth. You know what I mean?